You know those people that can like look at a weight and just put on muscle? It's so frustrating because for me, I've always had to work really, really hard for it. And personally, I've found that when I'm on a ketogenic diet, I respond better to the stimulus of weight training and actually put on more muscle. But that seems to be because I know how to time things properly and how to mess with insulin sensitivity. Anyhow, I'm going to share with you 5 steps that you can follow to build more muscle on keto. Look, I'm not saying any of this is magic, okay? But what I am saying is if you look at the biochemistry, overall, the ketogenic diet lends itself quite well to being, well, anabolic. What I mean by that is when you are in a ketogenic state, you have the presence of ketone bodies, which are very leucine sparing. So they preserve muscle. Normally when you work out, you have an sort of a catabolic effect. You break down tissue. Well, when you're in ketosis, you buffer that process. So you actually end up one step ahead. The problem is people get very afraid of carbohydrates and they don't touch them at all. And I'm telling you that if you manipulate it properly, you can have a few carbohydrates. Anyway, I will get into that. So the first thing that you need to do is you need to maintain high levels of insulin sensitivity. You see, here's what happens. People do keto for a while and eventually they start to lose their insulin sensitivity. And the reason that happens is because they're on the ketogenic diet and they're never having any carbohydrates, so their cells sort of become glucose intolerant. They sort of lose the ability to understand how to use carbohydrates well. Well, we still want to be able to properly bring in carbohydrates to instigate a muscle growth response. Okay, insulin can be our friend if we're building muscle. We just have to have it at very specific times. And if we become insulin, well, not sensitive, we have less opportunities to build muscle. So there's a few ways that we go about doing that. Number one is one I talk about all the time. Train as fasted as you possibly can. That way, when you do break your fast after your workout, or that way when you are done with your workout, you're very insulin sensitive and your body is ready to suck up what you do take in. Extra, more so than normal. I also want you to do something kind of wild. I want you to periodically train with a couple of carbohydrates prior to your workout. What? Is he nuts? Okay, listen, if you have like 10 or 15 grams of carbohydrates like one day a week pre-workout, it will accelerate how your body learns to utilize that glucose in sort of a, I don't know, just a performance setting. What that's going to do is it's going to make it so that when you do have carbohydrates occasionally, your body knows what to do with it. It comes from the old called sleep low training, where they used to like have people train in as deprived and a fasted state as possible, and then when they would compete, they would have them fueled. So then their body would get used to training in a very weak state, so then when it wasn't training in a weak state, it could really get a lot of performance. We're doing the same thing, but with carbohydrates. So one day a week, train with some carbohydrates in your system. Only like 10 or 15 though. And then additionally, you want to make sure that you're controlling your insulin spikes. Most people have their insulin levels high all the time, even when they're trying to build muscle, right? If they're not on keto, they just are eating, and their insulin levels are always high, which means their insulin sensitivity over time is slowly going down. We want controlled, really big spikes because that is how we get anabolic signaling. Big spikes of insulin, big spikes of mTOR, big anabolic response, period. So you want to keep it clean and you want to have clear, very defined meals and spikes in insulin, whether that's carbohydrates or protein, because they both spike insulin. Step number 2 is train hyperhydrated and have salt before your workouts, or at least intra-workout. One of the reasons that I'm a fan of salt is not just because of course, the neurological piece. We need sodium to get a muscle to contract. We lose sodium when we are on keto, simply just at rest. We don't even have to be sweating, let alone when you start working out, you lose it at a much more accelerated rate. So yes, we need that for contractile strength, but one of the things that we often forget is that if your insulin levels are low during a workout, which they would be, if you're bringing in sodium, it's going to cause the water to draw into the muscle cell. Okay, you're creating sort of this osmotic state where you're drawing water into the muscle cell, not into the subcutaneous puffy tissue. You're not going to get puffy from it. It's going to draw into the muscle cell. What does that do? It gives you a bigger pump. A pump is not just a vanity thing. Extra muscle volume gives you more internal leverage. So you can lift more weight because physics show you that you have more a bigger lever arm at that rate. But additionally, you're also stretching the tissue, stretching the fascia, and can potentially get more growth that way. If you want the electrolytes that I recommend on keto, I put a link down below. There's a sample pack. You can get 8 sample packs of Element for free. You just pay shipping, and the stuff tastes awesome. I like the lemon lime one. The orange salt one is super good. Anyhow, so there's a link down below, or you can go to drinklmnt.com/Thomas. Again, you're just paying for shipping, so you can try them out, see if you like them, whatever. I just wanted to make sure that I put that out there, and they're a big supporter of this channel. So thank you, Element, for being in line with me and for continuing the support. So check them out after this video if you want to use them pre-workout or intra-workout. It will not break a fast either. Step number 3 is disregard what people say about keeping fats super high all the time. I understand that you want to get the calories in if you're building muscle, but calories don't necessarily build muscle. Calories might make a more anabolic environment, but they are not the stimulus. Your stimulus is your workout. Your stimulus is always going to be the training. You just paint the environment for that training to do its job. And extra fat, although it does drive up ketone values a little bit, it's not giving you what you need. You still need protein. So although I don't have something concrete for you, what I want to tell you is to disregard trying to hammer in the fats all the time. I want you to still focus on protein, because I think the biggest mistake that you can make for building muscle on keto is just trying to drive up ketone levels high all the time. You still need protein. It's still an integral part of what you are after. Number 4 is going to be carbohydrate backloading. You do not have to do this all the time, but this is a big part of what I call a targeted ketogenic approach. Carbohydrate backloading is actually just a complicated way of saying having carbs after your workout. Okay, the idea is after a workout, you have carbohydrates and it restores your glycogen levels. It makes perfect sense because you're insulin sensitive and you have a better chance of those carbohydrates coming in and getting stored in the proper place as glycogen versus getting stored as fat. However, I will say a lot of the research shows that you can restore glycogen for like a day after your workout, but you do lose insulin sensitivity as time goes on. But I have a specific strategy for you. You don't have to do this all the time, but on the days where you feel like you need extra recovery, if you combine a little bit of regular carbohydrate, like regular glucose, okay, along with a little bit of fructose from fruit in a low fiber form so that it absorbs fast, along with a little bit of salt, you activate a very unique pathway. Okay, glucose, like regular carbohydrates, let's just hypothetically say like 1 rice cake, okay? That is going to take one kind of transporter. It's called S-GLUT1, okay? It rides 1 bus to your muscle. Then if you have fructose, that rides GLUT5. Okay, so that rides a different bus to your muscle. So in other words, you get 2 shuttle buses driving to your muscle to be able to deliver carbohydrates faster without those carbohydrates elevating insulin levels really high. So basically, you can get away with having like 20 or 25 grams of carbs if it's split kind of evenly between regular carbs and fructose. So do some research on high fructose level foods, do some research on what kind of glucose you want to use. I would usually, again, just say like a rice cake along with like some peaches, or a rice cake along with a little bit of an apple without the skin, so you cut the fiber out. And then the salt is just a sodium gated channel. You probably don't even need to add the salt. Honestly, just a little bit of salt to make sure that that sodium gated channel is actually working. Number 5 is one that I've really just been investigating over the last 6 months, and that is experimenting with essential amino acids, EAAs, but only with your post-workout meal. Do not have EAAs on their own. They will spike insulin, but with no additional substrates to actually do anything. Essential amino acids provide you with a lot of leucine, which means that you are triggering an anabolic response in the body. But if you do not have bioavailable protein in your system at that time, it goes to complete waste. It's like hammering the gas pedal on a car with no gas in it. It doesn't do anything, okay? It's not gonna take you anywhere. But there are studies that demonstrate that if you have leucine or essential amino acids with your protein shake or with your protein, it can literally 4x the protein synthesis, 4x the anabolic signaling. And remember, we are all about these very clear defined spikes and getting this big spike when we can so we can put on muscle while we are on a ketogenic diet. And then just as a bonus, since you're probably thinking you need to be in this caloric surplus all the time, you don't need to be in a surplus all the time. Be in a surplus on your recovery days. Be in a surplus on the days where you are not training as heavy. That way, those calories get allocated towards the actual recovery process versus feeding the inflammation that is coming in as a result of your heavy training to begin with. So as always, keep it locked in here on my channel, and I will see you tomorrow.